I witnessed a baby being born for the first time at age 17. I was sitting in a high school class my senior year when the teacher put in a video showing childbirth. Unmedicated, very screamy, very graphic, childbirth. I sat aghast as someone yelled out exactly what I was thinking. "Oh my gosh, what is that baby doing to that woman?" For one of the only times in my life, I was completely speechless. I was traumatized. Take note, parents, showing your teenagers birthing videos is excellent birth control. I should mention here that I don't do pain well. In fact, I'm a giant wimp when it comes to anything that maybe will hurt. So when my husband Courtney and I got married and started talking about having kids, not having any was a very real option. I mean, that video had me seriously worried, even a decade later, that I would not make it through that kind of insane pain. Then I accidentally got pregnant while on birth control at 28 years old. My first reaction to the positive pregnancy test was nausea and violent shaking. That childbirth video jumped to the forefront of my mind on autoplay, and I was scared to death. This was no longer a funny story about being a high school student afraid of childbirth. I took not just one, but several pregnancy tests, hoping to get one that would be negative. I did not want to be pregnant. I prayed that it was a mistake, that the tests were all wrong. I begged God to not let it be true. I mean, I was in grad school and in my 4th year teaching high school. Courtney and I hadn't even celebrated our 2nd wedding anniversary yet. This was not part of the plan. Shoot, having kids at all wasn't even part of the plan at that point. When we went to the doctor to confirm the pregnancy, I remember my general practitioner walking into the exam room with the results and a big smile on his face asking, "Well, do you want to be pregnant?" Neither Courtney or I knew how to answer that because our true answer was no. No, we did not want to be pregnant. When we reluctantly started telling people, I still felt like it wasn't real, that somehow it was all a mistake. I felt ashamed that I wasn't excited. Less than a month later, I noticed some bleeding. The nurse on the other end of the phone line assured me it was probably normal. I wasn't cramping, and it was my first pregnancy. I was probably fine, she repeated in earnest. But the next week at school, I realized I was bleeding even more. I called the doctor, and they told me to come in immediately. When I went to tell my assistant principal that I needed to leave, I burst into tears. Rattled by my request, he asked if I needed a ride to the doctor's office. I declined, packed up my classroom hurriedly, and left. I went home first to clean up and change. I had called Courtney and told him to meet me at the doctor's office, but before I left home, I laid down on the couch and cried. And I admit that I cried out of fear for me, not for the pregnancy. I was afraid of what would happen to me and whether it would hurt me. A giant ball of guilt punched me in the gut as I laid there. I had prayed for this pregnancy to not exist, and I was pretty sure my prayers were being answered. I was pretty sure that rather than having the positive pregnancy tests be an error, God was punishing me for not wanting to be a mother. He was going to quit the pregnancy in the most painful, punishing way possible. There were 4 of us in the exam room, about too many for how small it was. I searched the nurses' faces for any signs of concern, but she was all business, all routine. I was asked to lie down to try to relax my legs. My eyes scanned the room again. Finally, I found my words. "Is this going to hurt?" I blurted out. Her face softening, the nurse stopped what she was doing. She turned to Courtney and guided him by the arm to my side. "Why don't you stand here near her head and hold her hand?" Then she assured me that it would not be painful, but probably a little uncomfortable. It was definitely uncomfortable. The room was silent as I squeezed Courtney's hand and watched my doctor's face intently while he searched and searched. I felt tears burn in the corners of my eyes, but I wasn't going to let them fall. Courtney and I both watched the black and white screen, trying to see what the doctor was looking for, when finally Courtney broke the silence. "Is everything okay?" Well, my OB didn't finish. He didn't have to. He wasn't finding anything on that screen. I asked if we could take a break so I could use the bathroom. When I came back, the screen was off and I wasn't asked to lie down again. There wasn't anything to see. He used the phrase blighted ovum while Courtney watched him intently. I knew they must have talked about it while I was in the bathroom. I knew Courtney already knew what was being told. So there never was a baby? I asked. Not really. No, the doctor said. Basically, sperm and egg had come together, but like a celebrity marriage in my uterus, they had called it quits immediately. My body hadn't gotten the memo that the pregnancy had ended, and it kept building the house for the newlyweds to live in, which is why I kept getting a positive pregnancy test. My body thought it was pregnant when it wasn't. The pregnancy tests had been mistaken, after all. This piece of science was never in any reproductive health video I ever saw. We were taught that if we had sex, we were going to get pregnant, or an STD. No one ever told me that pregnancy could happen on birth control. No one ever told me that if you were happily married, maybe you didn't want to have a baby. No one ever told me that I could lose a pregnancy. No one ever told me that losing a pregnancy would turn my selfish heart into a mother's heart. When we got home from the doctor's office with the news that I would miscarry in the next week or so, Courtney and I stood in the garage. We both started to cry. He put his arms around me and whispered in my ear, "Well, I guess now we know that we want children." That childbirth video back in high school implied that a woman becomes a mother when her first child is born, but it was wrong. I went on to lose one more pregnancy before having 3 healthy children, but it's that first pregnancy I point to as the day I became a mother. Thank you.